We take this action not for the purpose of expanding the war into Cambodia, but for the purpose of ending the war in Vietnam and winning the just peace we all desire.
Let's talk about President Nixon. He knew he must end the war just because of the pressure of the politics in this country. So early 1970, he gave order attack to Cambodia because the communist central headquarters, they locate along the border, they command the war in Vietnam. But they are very safe because the U.S. troops and Vietnamese troops never, invade over there.
Throughout the entire American experience in Vietnam, there is a constant concern that the Americans are fighting the war with one hand tied behind their backs, that North Vietnam is allowed to work through these neutral countries of Laos and Cambodia. The Ho Chi Minh Trail weaves its way through both of those countries and is a major artery in terms of moving supplies and manpower down this trail into South Vietnam. And so after a secret bombing, which occurs in 1969 to hopefully hit and disrupt the North Vietnamese sanctuaries, Nixon agrees to a cross-border operation in the spring of 1970.
Here we are trying to stop this war, and it's escalating. That was traumatic. I mean, I remember watching it on TV. He was showing us, he had a map there showing us the Ho Chi Minh Trail that was going through Cambodia, and this is why we have to interdict and, invade and bomb the people of Cambodia, and this is, all because of the Soviet expansion and the weapons that the enemy of the North is coming in the South. I mean, just pure lies.
The announcement on April 30th of the invasion of Cambodia completely shocked the country and galvanized an anti-war movement that had actually been in some state of confusion and disarray for the preceding few months. There were protests all across the college campuses, and very famously and tragically, there were 4 students at Kent State who were killed by National Guardsmen in their protests against the war.
I sort of felt like, gosh, this is just getting worse and just getting worse. And then what happens on May 4th is just, it was very, 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 very hard and very, very tough. I wasn't sure if this war was ever going to end.
The mayor of New York, John Lindsay, had called for a day of remembrance for the Kent State 4. So there were about 200 anti-war protesters gathered outside of the stock exchange at Wall Street. A number of construction workers attacked the anti-war protesters. Around 70 people were injured. The Nixon administration pounced on it, associating themselves with the hard hat demonstrations and valorizing the actions of the hard hat construction workers. Nixon had spent the preceding 2 years depicting the anti-war movement as elite, as impudent snobs, as taking daddy's money, and also as being unpatriotic, rabble-rousers, and that helped bolster Nixon's credibility. In fact, it was after the Hard Hat riots that the first labor movement anti-war protest was held.
The fact that we'd been involved in Vietnam didn't mean that we were particularly supporting the war. Right? We just got swept up in it. The old cliche about people who hate war the most are the people who've been in war is probably true.
There was a lot of class resentment, a feeling that these entitled protesters were shutting down the colleges, burning buildings, creating havoc. So there was an anger at the protesters, not necessarily support for the war. In fact, some people said, well, I think the war is a terrible thing, but these protesters are awful.
I think I got arrested 14 times in various cities for protests against the war. The first time I spent a week in jail was in Washington, D.C. in the spring of 1970. We blocked the driveway to Nixon's White House. I'd wake up with a sweat every morning. I was afraid to take showers. I had 2 friends who were raped in the jail. I had 1 friend who got a lead bar cracked across his head. We fasted the entire time. I didn't eat at all either. So it was a traumatic experience, a scary experience.
When we were being briefed in Okinawa on our return back to the United States, they told us not to wear our uniforms when we got home. I mean, I was a Marine. I was very proud of being in the Marine Corps. And decorations aside, you know, I mean, it's just, this is my life. This is what I've been doing. And you're telling me it's not valuable, it's not worth it, that somehow I should, you know, hide it. It was very uncomfortable. You know, I think that the anti-war movement here in this country had a huge impact politically on ending the war, you know, and I kind of applaud them for that. But I think deep down inside, I can never forgive them for the way they treated the troops.
A lot of people say that the anti-war movement spit on the soldiers when they came home, when we have only found one instance of that, and even that person regrets having done it. And that gets fabricated into how the peace movement was so unpatriotic, and how the peace movement was so insensitive to the military. So one part of this story that I would like to get told is that it's patriotic to be against war, even if you can only right now think that it's patriotic to be in the military. Just because we care about people in other cultures, and we care about our own military and our own soldiers, we care so much about the soldiers, we don't want them to go fight wars.